Matbro was a brand of lifting equipment popular with farmers. The company was based in Wallington in Surrey, set up by two brothers, Horace and Leonard Matthew, to deal in second-hand ex-war department machinery. The Matbro company went on to produce a wide range of telescopic handlers, among other things, in their distinctive yellow livery, using engines derived from Perkins. The vehicles had different arrangements of lifting booms, but the basic principle was the same. Matbro began operating at a loss in the late 1990s, and in the end, it went under in 2003 after accounting issues with its parent company, PowerScreen. So, hello everybody, you're very welcome back to the channel. So I'm back again with a more regular video this week, back to the history books, and back to another company that doesn't exist anymore, another brand that doesn't exist anymore, but it is nonetheless a very, very popular brand, especially 70s, 80s, 90s. I know a lot of John Deere dealers around the 90s did have Matbro agency because, as you'll find out in the story, there is a tie-in with John Deere. And I do remember Meat Farm Machinery was a Matbro agent throughout the 1990s. And I do have history with Matbro. I did work on them. I did work them loading dung and picking stones and stuff like that, loading fertilizer. I did use them, the TR, I think it was a TR250, and we had a TS200 as well. They were probably demo machines around the time, but I do remember using them quite regularly. And they were a very, very good and capable machine, of course, with that Perkins engine. Yeah, they were a good machine. Looking at the time of the type of pivot steer telescopic loaders, that central position telescopic loader, there wasn't a whole lot of choice at the time. I know you had JCB and then you had Manitou coming through, but that type of loader was one of the first, and that style of loader and the actual Matbro did go on to, its genes are still in John Deere machines today and some Terex machines as well. So yeah, you're all very welcome back to the channel, and to everyone that has tuned in, not just last week, but over the last couple of weeks, and tuned into all the videos that are in the back catalogue now. I'm very, very nearly at 100, and the 100th video is in the making. I'm nearly finished with it, and it is going to be good. It will be coming out in the next, probably within the next 2 weeks. So yeah, if you're new to the channel, you're very welcome. If you haven't seen us before, we have a back catalogue, as I said, of nearly 100 videos dealing with all sorts of old machinery from the 1900s onwards, anything pre-war, post-war, from your 1200 Massey Ferguson to your 100 series, your Perkins engines themselves, Forts and Majors, Sammys, Dites, everything. They're all there. Everything is there to be viewed. David Brown, probably one of the most famous videos. So, but this video is all about Matbro, and as I always say, if you have history with Matbro, if you have had one, or you worked for them, you were in a John Deere dealership that was dealing with them at the time, please drop us a comment into the comment section, and I'd love to hear from you. Give us your thoughts and give us your history. If you have one at the minute, I know there's still plenty of them working out there, and I do see a lot of them still popping up for sale here and there. So yeah, we're going to get into the history. Not terribly long video, but if you just sit with me, and we'll get through it. Okay, so looking at the history, so Matbro, as I said, was set up by two brothers after the war to trade in army surplus machinery, and later they started to build industrial handling machinery under the name Matbro. In 1949, they developed a rough terrain forklift based on the Fordson E27N Major tractor skid unit. We do have video as well, of course, on Major and Fordson. The US Army surplus forklift they used in the yard kept getting stuck on the rough surface, so this machine was demonstrated to the press in 1950 and put into production. The option of a petrol or a Perkins power for the Fordson E27N Major unit was offered, as well as a choice of wheels. The machine had a 2-ton lift to a max of 9-foot height. When the Fordson was updated, the Mark II was introduced in 1953. They built them in a 10,000 square foot factory that their father rented them and produced up to 9 machines a week. They introduced the loading shovel in 1953 based on the Fordson Major skid unit called the Matbro Super Loadster. This was fitted with a 1 cubic yard bucket with a 10-foot reach. At the same time, Bray introduced the HL27, with both claiming to be the first. The machine was very popular and sold very well in France. In 1956, a 4-wheel drive version was offered. Production continued until 1964. Another experiment gave rise to the Matbro Mantis in 1956, which was a backhoe based on the forklift unit with mass swapped from the digger arm. The production model being fitted with a bulldozer blade for backfilling trenches. Other attachments were offered, but only about 40 were built, of which only a couple were known to have survived. They then went on to develop the pivot steer principle to solve transmission problems on hard surfaces with four-wheel drive systems. They developed the prototypes and applied to patent the idea in 1957. And if you're watching in Ireland, what great weather we've had over the last couple of weeks. First cut silage is on the way. Potato men are happy, all the spuds are nearly in the ground. Crops are looking great. They're getting, of course, T1, T2 sprays at the minute. A lot of the barley is shot out. Won't feel harvest coming around the corner. I know some people are going to be crying for a little bit of rain. I think there is going to be some rain coming the next day or two, but it is going to be good then. Again, next week is promised good again, but it is great to get this weather. It puts everyone in good humour, and the work is flying through. Farmers and contractors are flying through the work, especially the silage now. First cut silage will be wrapped up in a week, I'd say, the way things are going. So yeah, in 1958, saw the Mark III forklift introduced, based on the power major unit, a torque converter, and with power steering. The Matbro massive loading shovel incorporating the pivot steer system and used two Ford power major rear axles. In 1959, saw the company split from H&L Matthews Limited and become a limited company, which moved to new premises in Horley in Surrey. The Mastiff Super Loadster Series 2 was introduced in 1961 based on the new super major unit and powered by the Ford 590E six-cylinder engine. The pivot steer system was licensed to Caterpillar, International Harvester and Alice Chalmers for reportedly $1 million each. In 1962, the brothers also went on to build a few high horsepower four-wheel drive tractors based on the pivot steer system. The Matbro Mastiff 6100 MT, as it was called, this new tractor was built with 3-point linkage on the rear unit. A new factory was opened for loader production in Frome in Somerset. These tractors are now rare collector's pieces, fetching high prices at auction, and some were fitted with a Zettelmeyer cab. Only 20 of these were built as they were very expensive at the time. A Mark II version was introduced in 1967 with a 128 horsepower Ford 2704E and Ford 5000 axles and gearbox. In 1953, they took over Bray, another manufacturer of loading shovels and similar products, from Sheep Bridge Engineering. Later, they went on to develop some of the earliest telescopic handler designs in the UK, with the Matbro Ram 40, a pivot steer loader forklift cross for farm use. This developed into the Teleram introduced at 1981 Smithfield Royal Show. Several manufacturers now build very similar machines, including, of course, JCB, John Deere, and, of course, Manitou. Both the founder, Horace and Leonard, died in 1981, and John Matthew took over the running of the company. He then merged Matbro and Bray. So, looking at the Matbro telescopic forklift, in 1983, we saw a telescopic loader and Telestar with a rigid chassis introduced at the Royal Show. One of Matbro's machines was based on the RWC teleship machine developed by farmers Ron and Tony Collins. They sold RWC to the Benson Group in 1985, and later Matbro Bray bought the design and manufacturing rights in 1991. This had twin extending arms and resembled a skid steer loader, but was fitted with pallet forks, grain bucket or a muck grab. One of the early machines is still running today, according to recent magazine articles. So the company was finally sold to Powerscreen Internationals in the north of Ireland in July 1991. An input from one former employee said that he had worked for Matbro Limited in the Frome factory for 6 years, and when Powerscreen International took them over in the early 90s, they were told that their jobs were safe in the Frome factory. Yes, they were safe for approximately 4 days, and then they shut the Frome factory and all was moved to Tedbury. At this time, he left the firm and worked elsewhere. Then in 1991, he went to work at the Tedbury plant, travelling 52 miles a day for work, where he was involved in the development of the Teleram TR250. When in full production, he was building up to 15 fronts a week and stayed until August 1995, when he left to have a change of career. And the Teleram 250 was a very, very popular machine, and that's the one that I remember the most, that I worked the most throughout the 1990s, and there's plenty of them still out there. There's loads of videos on YouTube of people working their TR250s, but I do believe that this video is the first history video on Matbro that I could find on YouTube. So I could not find any other video on the history of Matbro on YouTube. So this is hopefully is a first. So following on from the sale to PowerScreen, deals were signed off to sell the Matbro TS260 machines badged as Ingersoll Rand VR60 in some markets, followed by a deal with John Deere in 1995 to market some of the models as John Deere machines in markets other than the USA, with Matbro fitting John Deere engines to them. These were to be made in the Dungannon factory in Northern Ireland. It was also reported that in 1994, Matbro's shares of the UK telehandler market was a staggering 24%, including forklifts. The old designs were then passed on to the construction giant Terex when they bought PowerScreen International in 1999 following accounting difficulties. The Matbro TeleShift design has been updated by Terex and John Deere, which has continued to evolve the designs and build them under license for Terex with new ideas such as side-mounted engines instead of rear ones and a hydrostatic drive instead of the often problematic torque converter system used in earlier Matbro models. Terex shut Matbro telehandlers Tedbury factory in 2001 as part of a global restructuring, moving production to the former Fermac facility in Manchester, along with Benford Dumpers production. So looking at the model range down through the years, so you had the Matbro, the Mastiff loader, and you had the Mastiff 6100 MT tractor, the Mantis digger, the Super Loader forklift, the Loadstar forklift, the S111 forklift, the 200 forklift, the Telestar forklift loader, that was a materials handling machine, and then you had the Tele-Ram loader, and you had the Ram 40 pivot loader, the TR200, the most popular, the TR250 pivot loader, the LS300 loading shovel, and the TeleShift. So that was originally the RWC development built machine. Then you had the Matbro TS260 with the Perkins 110 four-cylinder engine. That was also sold as the IR VR40 from 1995, and it was also badged to John Deere. So the Matbro TS270 from 1995, and that was also branded in John Deere. So then you had the last of them all was the Matbro TS280. So the later machines have been absorbed into the Terex lineup and rebadged or dropped under the recent revamp of models and ranges with consolidation and production and rebranding strategy. Some of the John Deere models are based, of course, on Matbro models. So that's it. That's where it wrapped up. It didn't have, the Matbro end of it didn't really have a huge history. The earlier days, obviously the post-war days, when they got into developing their own machines, that's where it started. But the load and shovel end of it that we're all very familiar with, they had a good run of it, they had a good history. And of course, you know, the name died, the legacy is still there, and the machines are still there, which is most important. So thanks for watching. I'll see everybody next week. Have a great week and enjoy the sunshine while it lasts.